I have watched so many bad Stephen King adaptations, whether it's the movies or the TV shows. So today I want to go over my top 5 favorite Stephen King movie adaptations. I'm Deanna Chapman, and let's dive in. So, number 5, we have Christine, which John Carpenter's involvement instantly made me feel like this was going to be one of the top tier movies before I had even watched it, simply because I had seen what he had done with Halloween, and I had been getting more and more into horror movies in general. So I really loved the idea of John Carpenter being involved in particular with that story, because who doesn't love a killer car in a horror movie too? You know, if you haven't seen it, I highly, highly recommend checking it out. Next up, we have one of my favorites, which is The Shining. It's one that I'm actually thinking of putting higher on my list than number 4, simply because I've watched it a couple times now, and some of the others on my list I maybe won't end up watching as often as I will rewatch The Shining. And The Shining has a fantastic, fantastic performance from Jack Nicholson, and I highly recommend this movie to not only Stephen King fans, but any fans of horror movies, or if you're wanting to get into more horror movies, because I did a video previously on how it's actually a terrible adaptation, but because of how much I enjoy it, it still ended up being one of my favorites. It doesn't really follow the source material as closely as I know Stephen King would have liked, and this has been a topic of discussion over the years, but I can't help but love it. So it makes the number 4 spot on my list. Next up, we have a more recent adaptation in It. This one was done by Andy Muschietti, and hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm not 100% sure, but I really loved the way he told the coming of age story. I've seen the TV miniseries as well, and obviously this is going to have a much bigger production than a 1990 miniseries. So getting to see the first part of how he had these kids come together, we see the Losers Club really forming in this movie, and he just does such a great job of understanding those characters and what makes them tick, because the book is over 1,100 pages long. That's a very, very long book, and this is why you have things missing from the miniseries in the 90s, and why they decided to split it into 2 when they decided to go the theatrical movie route with it. And I think it's just one of those stories where, unless you do a full-on miniseries, which they might still do at some point, let's be honest, they aren't beyond redoing Stephen King properties numerous times. We have 4 Carrie movies, we have 2 Firestarter movies, and I believe there's another Firestarter thing in the works. You also have the fact that there are multiple versions of Salem's Lot, so it's likely that we could see someone take on a It miniseries down the line. But I really love the style and the feel of the movie. I think it has a good soundtrack. There's just so much that I really, really do enjoy about it, and I believe I have that one marked down as a 4.5 out of 5. So these next 2 are both 5-star movies for me, which it's funny because I don't really love super, super long movies, and these both happen to come in around 3 hours, give or take, and they both were from the 90s as well, but I think there's just something about these 2, and we'll start off with Shawshank Redemption as my number 2, because I really, really love the performance from Tim Robbins in this one. And I know a lot of people talk about Morgan Freeman and his voice as he narrates things throughout the movie, but I really think Tim Robbins is the one who makes this movie works so well, because a lot of it focuses on his experience, and Morgan Freeman's character Red is just sort of there witnessing what Tim Robbins' character is going through the whole time. And I really think that Frank Darabont has a love for Stephen King adaptations, and I don't think there's been anything he's done that I haven't liked. I even really, really enjoy The Mist, despite how dire that ending is. And you know, that's maybe an honorable mention here, because like I said, I have numerous ones that come in in the 4-star range. So I kind of had to pick between a handful in order to get my 4 and 5 spots for this list. But Shawshank is a movie too that I feel like if you aren't paying attention to the opening credits, you could easily miss that it's a Stephen King adaptation. I've known a few people who didn't realize that until I had said something to them. And the same goes with my number 1 pick, which is The Green Mile. I really think Michael Clarke Duncan gives the performance of a lifetime, and sadly he is no longer with us anymore, but it's one of those movies where when you rewatch it, you pick up on some things that you might have missed the first time around or even the second time around, and it just makes it that much more enjoyable, even though it's a very harsh story in general. And between The Green Mile and Shawshank Redemption, you have a lot of stories of his that are very, very character driven, and I think those are some of the stories that adapt the best to the big screen. And that's why, my top 3 consists of The Green Mile, Shawshank, and It, because the groundwork was laid in the source material to just have these very interesting characters that you want to see come to life on the big screen. You have so much development with The Losers Club simply because it's more of a coming of age story, and you can say the same about Stand By Me, which is an adaptation of The Body, another fantastic one, so have to give that one a shout out here real quick. But to go back to The Green Mile, when you have this thing happening to John Coffey in the time period that it's happening in, we understand now that things like that are still happening, and to see how much it pains some of the characters in the story to see this happening to him, especially as they get to know him more. The prison guards are spending so many hours with him. You have certain ones that feel empathy, whereas you have 1 or 2 others who maybe don't feel that quite as much, and you just get a wide variety of characters even within this small story. It's not like The Green Mile takes place in an entire city. It's very much focused on the prison, and you really get to spend a lot of time with those characters, especially when you have around a 3-hour runtime. And again, Frank Darabont, fantastic director in my opinion when it comes to his Stephen King adaptations. So if you haven't seen any of these 5 movies, I highly recommend checking them out. But just to recap, we have Christine at number 5, The Shining at number 4, It at number 3, Shawshank Redemption at number 2, and The Green Mile at number 1. And obviously, I still have some other things to watch, but I feel pretty confident that The Dark Tower is not going to make my top 5 movie adaptation list for Stephen King movies in particular. But that's all I have for you today. If you like this video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It really does help. And you can follow me on social media. All of those links in the show description. I'll see you next time.